Bienvenidos a another show, Cafecito with Rosie, right here from downtown Florida at the Studio 24. And thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Andy, for hosting us today. Cafecito with Rosie is a show that was created by me because I want you to understand that as a business owner, you don't have to have it all together to be able to be successful. And that building relationships with people that you work with or people that can bring connections with you is the most important thing. And I call it leadership with a servant heart. Today, I have my friend Bruce from MyCare Medical here with us. How you doing, Bruce?
I'm great. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. So tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you help the community.
So I am a New York transplant here in Florida. I've been here for, well, on and off again. I went to college here. I say I grew up here, but I didn't really grow up here. I grew up in New York. I started my Medicare career here in Florida. I started at UnitedHealth back in individual market.
Okay.
Way back in the day, roughly around 20 years ago. And I loved doing individual market. And I thought, it's a really great way to be able to connect with the community and help. And I got into it completely on accident.
Right.
It was really more of, I had lost my job at Comcast Communications as a sales manager. And I applied for this random job at United. And I was like, I'm never getting this job. And then I got a call back and to my surprise was hired on the spot.
Right.
And so I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to wing this job. But I fell in love with individual market. But then as time had come and gone, healthcare reform came about. And all of a sudden, as much as I love helping people and being able to provide solutions, I also had a mortgage payment and a golden retriever to take care of. So I had to figure out, well, how do we reinvent ourselves? So I wasn't really sure. And someone had suggested, what about Medicare? And I said, I don't know that space. Unfortunately, most of my family had not made it to that age. So I had never really seen it. And I knew that there was a large spectrum between your Part A, your Part B, C, you have supplements, you have all these different moving parts. And I'm like, it scared me.
Right.
Which helped me later in my career, because if I was scared, what do people who are senior, like, what are they thinking and feeling? And it made sense as I developed my career. So I knew I needed to start back at square one. So I started in telesales, doing Medicare, learned it and kind of figured out, okay, this is how, but then I knew that wasn't enough. So then I took it to the field and I started as an agent under a brokerage firm. I did that for a while. I wasn't as much as diligent with my time as I should have been. Like when you're in your early or late 20s, early 30s, you go to the gym, you do this, you do that, and then by time, your work is your after for, and I'll do it tomorrow. And so I struggled a little bit with that part, which helped me with leadership later down the road. So after that part, I decided I wanted to go on the health plan side and was offered a great opportunity to oversee the inside sales team for Blue Cross Blue Shield in New York. I did that for a few years. I was there for a total of 8 years, almost 9, but was promoted to director of Medicare, in which I oversaw all of our telesales units, our field, our broker, anything that really was retail market. I loved what I did. Loved, loved, loved. I didn't love winters in upstate New York.
Okay.
No. So when the pandemic hit and we went remote, I did that role from afar, knowing that at some point we'd have to go back.
Right.
But Rosie, Tampa Bay is so nice. Nobody wants to go back. So when I got the call back that it's time to go back to the office, I was, no, I'm not going back to New York. So I parted ways with Blue Cross, still great friends with my leaders. They were amazing and just a family, and I loved them dearly. Then was offered an opportunity to be a senior vice president of sales at a brokerage firm down in South Florida. And it was my dream job. I mean, that was, when you're young, you're taught you have to have these job titles, and that's how how you're important. If you own your house and you are a CEO or something in the C-suite, that's how you know you're successful. Later to learn that that's not how you're successful at all. I didn't love that match. It wasn't great. I believe that we do the right thing for people every time without fail, without question. I'm not sure the organization I aligned myself with was on board with that. It was more about profit.
Right.
I'm not okay with that. So I spent a few months there when I realized it was a losing battle. So I packed my stuff, went back home to St. Pete at that point. Really thought about what's next when a recruiter from MyCare Medical reached out, and on the provider side or MSO side, And I knew nothing about it. Again, I'm like, I'm not getting this job, although I have all this experience in Medicare and on the broker side, telesales, and the one thing that would make it full circle was coming back to the primary care side. But I didn't think I stood a chance. But our CFO at that point he's like, I love Bruce's personality. He hadn't worked with me at that point, but I love Bruce's personality and spirit. So they brought me on, and I've met great people like yourself and other brokers throughout, really understanding like what are the unique and distinct challenges that our seniors face. I understood it from the broker side. I understood it from the health plan side. But now I really am like working, I see it from the other side.
The doctor.
And so my long-term goals, you and I have talked about a few times, and my long-term goal is to be able to help people more on the individual side and probably the broker agent side. But I'm so glad I've had all these unique experiences, because I really feel like then we talk about leading with a servitude heart, like then you can really understand and ask better questions to understand like how can I really help you?
Right. And this is the thing that people don't understand. So you're talking about you did individual healthcare. When I started in the Medicare space, everybody was doing individual healthcare because it was a very profitable business. So I was the Medicare girl, Medicare matchmaker. And people says, oh, I don't touch Medicare. First of all, I don't understand it. People like you and I, young and with all their capacity, mental capacity, says, I don't want anything to do with that. So I rather refer the business to you. So I became very, very busy because nobody did it. So everybody would connect with me and send me, and the relationships that I built. I even went to a bank one time, and the guy that did the finances, like the investing for the bank, he couldn't do Medicare. He says, you do Medicare, right? Hey, I have a friend that just invested $1 million. He needs to get Medicare. So call him, because I don't do any of that. So I realized that even in places where you don't understand, that you would think, why would somebody come here for Medicare? How they have to invest their money. They have to put their money somewhere, or they're going to go to the banks and do it. So I realized property and casualty companies were my allies and banks were my allies. But at the end of the day, it was leading with a servant heart, because we will not be in business if our seniors are not confused, scared and confused. And that's what I share with a lot of the people that you come to this business. Listen, you mentioned something. They were about the profits. See, I'm not here about the profits. I have about 10 agents, 12 agents. They're not the top producer agents, but they all produce, which they have a lot of companies that have 400, 500 agents, but maybe a 40%, a 10%, which is 40 people are producing. The other people are just like there. But why my agents produce? Because they lead with a servant heart and they build those relationships. So in your case, you have worked in every spectrum, building those relationships that now you can take up as an example and go help somebody else. So how important do you think it is, those relationships, and keep up with those, nurturing those relationships?
So they are so critical to everything you do. So I've mentored people on my team. I've helped people that have asked me, like, what have you done to be successful? And, I use the word successful. It's such a, because success is so different and personal. But if you had asked me when I was 20, it was a Mercedes-Benz, it was a Rolex, it was a house on a golf course. It was all the things that we're told are success. But I always say, everybody's watching you. Everybody's listening to you. The people that you think that aren't. So when I started at UnitedHealthcare, I started as an operations supervisor. I wasn't in sales. And I didn't care for my leader at that point. It was very micromanaged, and I knew I was smart, and I didn't need every email to go through my boss. So I left. I was offered a job by Ford Motor Company as a business development leader, and I left UnitedHealthcare. I left for about 8 months before returning, but it was an account executive from the team that I had worked with. Now, I didn't work with them closely. I knew of them. I spoke when there were issues. I worked with them. We did a lot of the alignments and technology. But I received a call from this woman named Natalie, who's still a dear friend of mine. And she said, I remember you, and I remember the impacts that you had on that team and how happy they were. And in turn, they did better work, and that they were able to sell more. So she said, would you please come back? And I said, I won't come back for the same boss. She goes, well, they've realigned, and I'm now the leader, and I would love for you to come back.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt that it came at a very large raise that I thoroughly enjoyed. But everybody's watching, even when you think they're not.
Exactly. And see, when everybody's watching, it's about your character, your integrity, your authenticity, because who you are is how people are going to remember you, right? So a lot of people says, oh, Rosie has large in their life energy, which sometimes, depending where I am, I have to kind of regulate that energy. So if I'm in a setting, a smaller setting, I kind of have to, can't go all the way out this way. But if I'm doing a presentation for 30, 50 people, 100 people, then you have to have that larger for life energy. But at the end of the day, even when you know me individual one-to-one, you realize, oh my God, Rosie has so much energy. It gets me tired just looking at her.
It's what drew me to you. Like, because I also I'm a typical New York Italian. Like we have larger than life personalities. And you're right, though. You have to also, and that was one of the lessons I had to learn was like, although we want to be authentic and we want to be like, and it's hard to sometimes be authentic, but sometimes you have to know your audience and you have to scale things. You can still be authentic without being over the top.
Right. And I think one of those things too is in a lot of settings, people want to put you in a box. And when you don't fit in anybody's box, right? It's like in their mind, they're trying to put you in this box so it can make sense to them. But just because they want to put you in that box, that doesn't mean that that's your box. And that's where you have to stay. You have to be authentic and true to yourself. And at the end of the day, when you end up doing something that is not you, that is not your calling, it's going to become overwhelming. It's going to become tiresome, and it's going to become something that you don't want to do. And you're going to struggle with it every single day because you said, I don't want to do that. It's subconsciously, you already wake up tired just thinking about, oh, I have to do this, which I don't like to do, right? And I think not only as a business owner, but as a corporation, I think people now are moving into that space of understanding the culture, right? The culture is made by the people that work for that company. So the owner of the company can have some core values and the vision of what they want, but the culture is built by the employee. And it's very important. What is the culture that you want to have in your corporation? And that's how you hire too. Because you have that clear, you want to hire people that perhaps, like you said, they're self-sufficient. You don't have to know it all. In the Medicare arena, listen, everybody thinks that we sell. First of all, we don't sell. We don't sell anything. We educate people. We help people clarify their confusion. First of all, that I'm scared and confused. And I always say, just call Rosie. Because what? The first thing is that, what is the biggest thing that the seniors have? I'm going to have all these bills. All my retirement money is going to go to pay these bills. And I'm going to be homeless and without food.
Correct.
That's 100%. What they think all the time. And then they don't want to talk about insurance at all because they just don't want to talk about it. But if they get sick, they want to make sure that the insurance works. Okay? So that's what I tell my agents, and you can understand this, because the doctor at the office cannot say, oh, this is the prescription that you need here, without really listening to the person's illness, to the person's need, what are they looking for, right? And again, building those relationships with your patients, right?
Absolutely.
Now, doctors, let's talk about that. Doctors, to me, are leaders in their community, right?
Absolutely.
Because they are making a difference on all those people around them. With MyCare Medical, I know that's one of those things that is very important to you.
It is.
A little bit about if somebody goes into their clinics, what is it that they can expect out of the clinics in MyCare Medical?
So that's a great question. So I think, especially on the provider side, what I've learned over the year is there's a ton of competition out there. And I hate using the word competition because we all want to do the most good. At least I want to believe that we all want to do the most good. And at MyCare, I really do believe it. I told you before, I've left great paying, high performing jobs, but didn't align with what my personal values and morals were. So I left.
Right.
What I love about MyCare is it's very, I want to say family oriented because, I mean, it's a corporation. But the doctors we don't overbook the roster. the doctors all take a good amount of time to not just understand and know, but to really identify the need beyond the need. Like if someone is asking a question, but why are you asking that? Like talk to me, because you have to earn their trust.
Right.
They're not coming out. They don't really know you. They may have saw your advertisement or your bio, but they don't know you. And although they might tell you a little bit, you haven't earned the right to get the whole story. So our doctors, they're not back to back. They build time to get to know their patient and get to know, well, like, what are their activities? What do you do when you're not here? What would you like to do that maybe your health is currently impeding? We do a ton of follow-up, like, hey, how is that going? It's not just a try this med and we'll see you in a month or we'll see you in 2 months, which is another value prop that I really like about MyCare. Some of our competition really require that you go every month, but we have a large group of people that
don't need to go.
They're vibrant, they're healthy, they just go for their annual, and that's fine too. We don't require those things. If you're good, you want to stop in, absolutely. You want to call us, absolutely. You want to do a Zoom or a webinar, we can even do that. We do hospital visits also. God forbid something does happen and but we don't require, like, go live your life. I mean, I think that's another important thing we don't talk about is 20 years ago, the face of the senior market was very different than today. I remember when I started, I don't want to go back to, they were knitting and woodworking because that's, but they weren't skydiving. I don't feel like they were scuba diving,
or crossing from Cuba to Florida. That lady, Naya, yes, that swimmer, that she was over 65 years old, I think 68 years old. And she crossed from Cuba all the way to the Keys in Florida. And that was what she wanted to do all her life because she has swum all channels. But that is the senior population. You're so right.
I give so much credit. I won't even jump in my pool without the pool light on, let alone I'm going to swim in the ocean across. No.
Yes.
So I love the stories. And I'll share a quick story. So when I first got my start in Medicare, I was so excited, and it was my first day. It was my first client in the field. I met him at a local restaurant, and I'm all excited, and I'm like, this is the best time of your life. This must be so exciting for you. You have, you're retired now. You have these benefits coming to you. This is great. And he looked at me and he said, you might be the stupidest person I have ever met. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know. I was like, I don't even know what to say. But when I composed myself, I said, do you mind elaborating on that? And he said, absolutely. He said, Bruce, I've had the same job for 35 years. I was married to the same woman for the last 40 years. I said, he said, those things aren't true anymore. I don't know what insurance looks like. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I have no idea what I'm waking up for. I'm scared. And you mentioned that earlier. I'm scared. But in my mind, this was a point of celebration. And I very quickly learned, and I made him a very close friend. And I kept him for quite a few years until he also moved on. We don't like talking about those things, but it's always sad, but it is reality. But I would call him like, hey, I have an idea. What are your thoughts? Bruce, no, no, do not do that. Like, it was learning experience, but it was in the field learning, and people are scared and they're anxious and they're nervous. So they need somebody just like you that they know, they trust. They're going to get an honest answer from, or they'll say, hey, what about this? No, not for you. And they need that. And it's so hard.
You talk about the trust, right? And again, I think one of the things that many of these doctors and Medicare people or brokers, they don't realize that this relationship happens not when they're about to turn 65. It's too late by then. A lot of people have waited, 64 and a half, let's start bombarding them. Let's go to their house and stuff like that. But the important thing is you had to start early. And you and I agree on this.
We do.
To me, it's kind of like those 60, 62 years old, you build a relationship with there's nothing that you can offer to them at that point except some connection, except some clarity about things, except if hey, I need a painter for my house. Hey, I have somebody that I can recommend. And you build those relationships with them. So when you constant and present and persistently in front of them, once they have to make that decision, they say, oh, Rosie, Bruce, they can help me. And see, I get their Medicare education done. We help them with their plan. And then I have to find a relationship with a great doctor, like one of the MyCare Medical doctors, that I can say, okay, listen, this is a friend of mine, because all of my clients are my family, my friend, and now I'm handling them to you. And I want you to hear what they're looking for, what they need, and you treat them like family, like me. And at the same time, if there's a concern, a question, you can call me and say, hey, we need to talk about this person's insurance. Perhaps the one that they have right now is not making the cut. We need to diversify or add something or change plans. But it's about that building of the relationship.
Absolutely.
As an agent, you know, you work in the field up in New York with Florida Blue. What do you think was the most important thing as the agent once you sit and, because 99% of the time when they invite you to your home, to their home, or to have a cup of coffee, they already made the decision they want to work with you. What is the most important thing that you can build out of that relationship before even the sale happens?
Getting to know them. I just ask a ton of questions, and I don't ask questions about their current plan. I don't ask what medications they're on. We'll get to those, but like, who's Rosie? What do you like? What do you enjoy? Like, I want to get to know you.
Right.
I want to understand where you come from and what your perceptions are on things. Like, let's just have a conversation. Let's talk about good experiences you've had. Let's talk about the less than great experiences you've had. What do you value more? Like, what's more important to you? And as you work through understanding who they are as a person, then you slowly will migrate to, let's talk about finances. Like, what's more important to you? Are you nervous and scared about healthcare and you want to lean heavier into a more benefit-rich plan? Or do you lean towards, like, I'm not as worried about it. Like, I'd rather get some of the supplemental benefits for, you know, you migrate to those. But it's also important to not just change gears, but then to go back to, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me about, so you said you're scared about that. Why? Has something happened in the past where you were nervous about that? Building that rapport and that trust. But you and I, we align on so many things. It's about being authentic. Like, if you're not authentic, then you're done. Because if you're just asking questions to rapid fire the next one and you're not listening to understand because you legitimately care, you might win them for the day, but you will not win them for the long term. There
will be some of those competitions that will go in there and tell them something that is not right and take the plan, and they were not going to be happy. But that's one of those things that, you know, people, and you talk about this is so clearly, be authentic, be who you are. But to me, one of the things that I tell my clients, don't ask me how, but I remember things that I talked to them when they were my client 10, 15 years ago, right? And at that moment, the plan that we talked about did not offer those benefits that they were looking for or value-added services. But 5 years down the road, now these plans have changed and they have that. But it's not the plan that they have. And I remember, don't ask me how, I know now it's because I listened when I sat down with them. I did not hear them. I listened to understand what they were looking for. So when we make the decision, I says, this is the plan that suits your needs right now. However, the specific need that you have is not it's not here right now. But you get in this other benefit. So right now, between these two, which one is the one that you prefer? So they go with this one. So 5 years down the road, now you have this one plus this one. Now I call them back and I say, hey, listen, we need to review your policy because remember that thing that you were looking for is now adding in this other program. And usually with Medicare, people stay there for a very long time. Their policies renew every year. I don't have to do that much of the going to visit at their home. We usually do an annual review of their policy, but it's very little of clients that will not call me and says, hey, Rosie, you know, I see on TV, oh my God, they don't stop during October 15th to December 7th. They don't stop about this. Give me $1,200 or $1,980, I think it is now, back into my Social Security. What is it that I'm giving up? But they call me first. because they can call the 800 number, which is the biggest thing. Don't call the 800 number, please. Don't call the 800 number, because you will not going to end up with what you need. And that thorough need analysis is what makes it so important. That's what we need to do as agents. So the other part that I actually want to also ask you is, you're very engaged in the community. In your case, it's brokers, because you need to build those relationships with the broker. But why do you think that is important to grow where you planted, per se?
Working with, so on the broker side, but I look at a community, because I don't just support, like we have our 18 clinics throughout all of Tampa Bay. But I have brokers that want to do events in Lakeland, and they want to do them down south. And, prior to this role, the direction was that, if it's not close to a clinic, why would we want to do an event over there? I'm not supporting, it's relationships.
Right.
When you call me and say, hey, I want to do something in Zephyr Hills, and I don't have a clinic in Zephyr Hills. Would I love one? Yes.
Right.
But we don't currently have one. That doesn't mean I'm not going to support you, because I know that MyCare is not being sold at the consumer level.
Right.
It's being offered when it makes sense and it's the right fit, that you'll offer it when those things are true. But I'm supporting you because I adore you to begin with. So, but the very close broker pool that I have, so of course, it's like everything else. We have our close friends, and then we have our acquaintances, and they build out. So, I work with, 200 to 300 different brokers, and I say work with, like I communicate with, we plan stuff, most of it falls through. But then I have, down to a core, maybe 15, and then I have like my top 4, you obviously being one of those. So it's different, and it's just, I want to help you grow, and I know in turn, at some point when it makes sense, but you don't do it with the intention of, what am I going to get out of this? That's what I take out of it. I never want to. When I sold Medicare, I would tell people all the time, you're on the right plan. I can't help you, but if you know somebody else that could benefit from this, let me know. But for you, and they were like, no, I like you. I want to plan with you. I'm like, but you're on the right plan. I can't move you. But I will check in with you. And as situations change, because like you said, things do change down the road. And my boss used to hate, because I used to say all the time, I'm like, you're not married to these plans. It's an open relationship. I mean, and there's so many ways. As your situation changes, but hey, we're friends. And as your situation changes, now I'm going to touch base with you. But in the event that we cross paths, something changes, call me. I'm your dedicated person, not your dedicated salesperson. I'm your dedicated person. I help you with your insurance, whether it's going to be with me or somebody else. I will tell you, hey, this might be a better solution. Right.
And as brokers, see, this is what they don't understand. As broker, we're building the relationships with those seniors that eventually are going to need our services. But even if they don't need our services, because there's people that they have, for example, a group plan from New York that is really, really good, but they love you. Well, what's going to happen is that they fall in love with you, and then they say to their friends and families, hey, you need to call Rosie, because those friends and families don't have the same the great group health insurance that they have from their employee before, but they have questions. They are scared and they're confused, and they just need somebody that is able to understand where they're coming from. And you don't have to have the same 20 years of experience with me. My husband always jokes and says, oh, honey, you already sold another policy in your sleep, because I know Medicare so much, because that's all I do. But it's not that. It's what you are really presenting these people is, listen, I am this local agent that I'm growing with and planting. I lead with a servant heart, and I'm here to serve you, to see you, and to understand what you need. Clarify those questions, and after that, you have a decision to make, either be with me or with somebody else, but you have the information you need to make that informed decision of where you need to go from now. So,
absolutely. You touched on something earlier, and it was so true. So what I learned when I was at Blue Cross, and I was overseeing our telesales team to begin with, they were calling at 59, 60, 61. If you're starting to make your attempts at 64 and a half, 63, the calls you're getting by then are just people that already know the answer to the question and they're testing you.
Right.
So you're way behind and even though the health plan I worked for had a great group plan and it was the number one plan, we had like 87% of the market share. I was always amazed that number one, they didn't know we sold Medicare, or I should say offered Medicare.
Right.
But two, they were scared. I need to start planning for retirement. We've been working towards it, but the goalposts changed. Inflation changed.
Right.
Pandemic hit.
Right.
Now they're scared. Like, I thought I was ready and now I don't know if I am. So dealing with those things, but you were spot on. If you were waiting till 64, you've missed the goalpost.
Right. And then I think and this is our last question to touch and I think one of the things that I has been able to work with a lot of doctors' practices, which is what you touch on. Okay, you might not have an office in Zephyr Hills, but if you support me, Rosie, I sell in Pinellas. I'm licensed all over the state of Florida. I'm licensed in Texas. Now you have an office. You also have offices in Texas. You have offices in other places of Florida, not specifically in Zephyr Hills, but everything else. But guess what? Now Rosie has MyCare Medical. When I make a presentation, which I also tell people, when I present a Medicare plan, people actually already have their doctors, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's why you need to, as a doctor, start a little bit before, okay? Because you need to see those people that they're turning 60, 62, 63. But now they have that relationship. I have the relationship with Bruce. So if I have somebody that is new from, just moved from New York over here and they have no idea with the doctors, and I have a MyCare Medical office 2 blocks from this person. Now I can say, hey, I can get together with somebody from MyCare Medical, take a tour of the doctor, meet the doctor's office, meet the doctor before you make the decision. But there is what they do, this and this and this and this. Why? Because you invested in me and now I have this relationship. That doesn't make me I have to still be unbiased. I cannot sell because of my license. I cannot sell a doctor over another doctor. But the reality is, if a person is new and they're 2 blocks away, there's no brain for them to just go maybe walk 2 blocks to their doctor's office, because that's what they have. They want the proximity and things like that. So it's just, again, building those relationships where I can go to bat for MyCare Medical and say, this is a company that I know. And because my clients trust me that I know, now I know you, doesn't matter that you don't have an office in Zephyr Hills. Okay.
Absolutely.
And so it's great that you do that and that you have that experience and that way of doing things. The relationship building. And I know you mentioned you have your core agents, but you have all, this, I don't know how many agents in Tampa, and they all offer you everything. It's like, how do you kind of pick and choose? What is it that you kind of look in those agents that you call it the care, like your core value agents?
So that's a really great question. So they're become friends and they become an extension of family. They're the people that just check in and say, hey, how are things going? Anything I can do for you? And whether it's personal or whether it's business. And in turn, I also do those things. We do check-ins of, hey, haven't heard from you in a couple of days. You were on vacation. Hope you had a great time. And usually, and it's funny when you start those relationships, it's like, oh, did you need something? No, I was just asking you how you were doing. I legitimately like you. And I have 2 work phones. I have my work phone. I have my personal one. Right. And as you know,
not everybody has your personal.
Not everyone has my personal one. So after a couple of weeks of working together, you have to earn the right to my personal one, because that one's attached to me morning and night. The other ones are within business hours. But you have to earn, just like every other relationship, you have to earn your right. The client, you have to earn your right for that prospect, and for that patient, for that client. Same thing with friends. You earn that right that you can call me at midnight and I will answer the phone for you. Whereas everybody else, do not call me.
Yeah. Go to voicemail. But Bruce, this has been so amazing. And Thank you so much for everything that you do for SNR services. So now tell people that they're watching us where they can find you, how can they connect with you and MyCare Medical.
So you can connect with me by email, which is very simple. It's my first name, last name at gmail.com, which is just BRUCEBON, like Nancy, ELLO at gmail.com. I will give you guys my special number at 315-223-1964. If you're a friend of Rosie, then you're now a friend of mine. But on social media, I'm on Facebook, although I will admit that I'm not the techiest person. I'm in my mid-40s.
That's okay. And that's okay. But thank you again for coming over here. And again, one more time, a big shout out to 24M Studios in downtown Tampa, MyCare Medical, Bruce for coming over here today. And remember, my friends, only you were created to live the purpose that only you can fulfill and provide to help others. Don't forget, lead with a servant heart. Stay pure, stay positive, and stay inspired. Ciao.